So this is the data and analytics version of how to cook your family dinner in 30 minutes, all right? It's how to get better at data and analytics in 2 weeks. A lot of leaders that we encounter are stuck on some kind of a concrete challenge that they have in their mind that they need an answer to. They know data can help, but they have a really hard time getting started. So I'm going to share a recipe with you that will allow you to get started down the road and make a lot of progress in 2 weeks. And I'm going to do more than that. I'm going to tell you something that you don't usually hear from a consultant, which is don't hire us to do this. Okay. Now, why would I say that? Well, the reason is success in data and analytics over the medium to long term requires partnership. It's not just the technical inputs, not just the data, it's also the people in the process. And that has to come from, at least in part, internal resources. You need to identify the areas of interest, the pockets of momentum, and the people that are going to be willing to be champions for teaching themselves things that they didn't know, finding out where the data lives, talking to the right people, making the connections, building the feedback loops that you need to reach your potential as an organization with data and analytics and get yourself into a cycle of continuous improvement with data and analytics. That sounds daunting. That's a longer road, and you don't need to get there overnight. You can make a lot of progress in 2 weeks, but by doing so yourself, you can actually also lay part of an essential foundation to that longer road and therefore increase the ROI on the 2 weeks that you're going to spend getting unstuck on what you've been stuck on. Okay, so here's how to do it. So you got that concrete challenge. First, answer a few basic questions. What are you trying to understand specifically? And what's the best measure of that? What data do you have that could be used to create a measure or create a proxy for that measure? And where does that data live? Next, and this is key to starting to form that foundation for ultimately the ability to drive data and analytics all the way to its potential. Find an employee that's eager to take this on and assign them the task. Give them the responsibility, and they'll thank you for it, and they'll rise to the occasion. Give them the answers to those questions that you answered, and make sure that they really understand your goal, what you're trying to do in 2 weeks, and why. And then give them a good start. Discuss the architecture, the basic architecture of what you're trying to build. You're looking for a way to get data out of whatever source system it lives in that you need on a routine basis and put it somewhere where you can easily see and manipulate it. So that could be Power BI, or other alternatives are Tableau, Domo, or other visualization tools, or maybe even just Excel or Google Sheet if you're more comfortable there. Now I'll talk a little bit about Power BI specifically, but all of these all these other tools have material out there that can show you how to do this easily with them as well. So Power BI has direct connectors to many source systems. Sometimes you've got a lot of data that you need to tap into. If it's too much, or if there's no direct connectors from Power BI to your source system, whatever your tool of choice is, don't despair. There's a ton of additional tools that are available, are easy to use, are relatively inexpensive, that are capable of essentially forming that connective tissue that you need between your source data system and the front end that you're ultimately hoping to work with your data and visualize your data in. We're talking about things like Zapier automations and other integration as a service types of tools that really allow you to connect any data source system together with any other system, be it a front-end data visualization tool or a spreadsheet, and a range of things in between. Now, if you're starting from ground zero, from no insight at all into what that data looks like, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. You're trying to get somewhere meaningful in a short period of time. Get something basic up and running. Take the top 1,000 lines of data, or the top data for the top 5 customers. You know your data the best. You know what's going to be meaningful to look at. Later, you can think about how to scale that and do it in the right way, do it more efficiently, because you'll be armed with insights from this initial exploration. So don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. And don't be intimidated by all these new tools. There are resources everywhere. So check the comments section of this video or hit us up and I'll point you in the right direction. Even spend some time with you or your employee to talk through your plan or help you troubleshoot. Getting somewhere meaningful with data and analytics, getting unstuck in 2 weeks is not too much to ask. And the great thing is that from there, there's some really good options in terms of bringing other skills and experiences like the ones that we have in terms of operations research and economics to bear. So what can you do next? For starters, you can start to think about your business in a more systematic way relative to data and analytics. So think about your business in terms of a production function, a mathematical model. It's easy to know what your output is. What are the inputs that generate those outputs? What are the constraints? You want to write down essentially a model of your business, and we can help you do that. Why? Well, this gives you a view of the different levers and the constraints that are relevant to operating your business and to growing it and to scaling it and to taking it in new directions. And there are tools that we can help you then easily apply to the data that you have to evaluate those levers quantitatively, to find out what they cost, how they trade off against each other, or what relaxing some of the constraints would be worth. Second, you can think about scaling in both depth and breadth the data and analytics that you're pulling together. And you can do it in a directed way thanks to that model that you just built, because you've identified what levers and constraints you want insights into. So you're going to use that to map out what you want to look at and pull together a strategy for integrating it. And third, and this is kind of really happening in parallel, you're establishing a process of what we call data-enabled continuous improvement. So you're really creating the feedback loops, identifying the individuals and driving engagement, having recurring sessions where you look at the data together and interpret it and wrestle with ambiguities and resolve them, understand how to look at the data, what refinements you need to make to the measures that you've already built, and get comfortable with looking at the information periodically, understanding what it means, deciding what actions should flow from that, taking those actions, and then going and looking at the data again and validating that those actions were taken because you can see them in the data, and then understanding how much progress that allowed you to make, and continuing to iterate like that over and over again until you're in that cycle of continuous improvement and you're using the data to actually fly your organization as a pilot would use data on their instrument panel to fly an airplane. And you're using longer term modeling to guide where it's going to be most fruitful for you to push and scale your business, but also really short-term on-target data and analytics to understand how to operate it at its current potential. So those are just some of the exciting directions that you can head once you get unstuck from where you are with data and analytics, get past the intimidation factor with the tools and the sheer volume of data, and just spend 2 weeks getting unstuck. Let us know if we can be of any help, but don't hire us to do those first 2 weeks of getting unstuck. We'll help you troubleshoot, and I know you can do it. And from there, there's some really exciting options.